channel, or if you're new here, I'm Daniela, and today I'm going to be talking about how I learned to wing. I'm going to go over the gear I used, I'm going to talk about the gear that I'm using now since I've gotten better, and I'm going to finish it off with some tips that will hopefully make it easier for all of you to learn how to wing. So yeah, I'm really excited. All of my previous tutorials have been about kiting, so I'm really excited to switch it up to winging and kind of tell you guys about my experience with winging. I am super addicted right now, and it's been super fun for me to do this past summer. So yeah, I'm really excited just to share the stoke and hopefully get you all addicted to winging as well. So yeah, let's get started. So first, let's talk about the gear that I used to learn to wing. The board I used was 152 by 58 centimeters, and it's between 65 and 70 liters. It was really a good size for me just because it was the right volume. The foil I used was a Mike Slab winging foil, and the only thing I know is that I think the wingspan was 95 centimeters. If I find out the other dimensions, I'll put them like over here somewhere or something like that. The nice thing about it was that it was really similar to all of the kiting race foils that I've been on, so it kind of made it a really nice progression. So it was a little bit easier for me to actually get started on this one rather than like a normal winging foil, just because it was really high aspect and it was just really similar to what I'm used to riding when I kite. And the wing that I used was the 5-meter swing from F1. The board that I have now, since I've gotten better, is actually much smaller. It's only 35 liters, and the dimensions are 4 feet 9 inches by about 20 inches. And obviously this is significantly smaller than the board that I learned on, but just for me personally, I think it's a lot more fun to ride just because it is so much smaller. And for me, the bigger board was nice to learn on when I was still like figuring out how to get up, but once I got up, it felt really, really big. So this smaller board actually is much more fun to ride. And yes, it is a little bit more difficult to get up on, but I'll totally take that for a much more fun ride. Obviously, because it's such a small board, I do need a little bit of a bigger wing to actually get up, so I'm still using the 5-meter swing from F1 just because it's the perfect size, and I've been able to use it in anything from like 15 knots all the way to 25 knots. So it's been the perfect wing size for me and for that board, and I've really enjoyed riding that gear. So right now I use 2 different foils. I kind of switch off between the same Mike Slab winging foil that I learned on and a Levitas Shaka M surf foil actually. And the reason I like the Mike's foil is for those days when it's really windy and it's pretty flat and I just want to go for more of like a speed session and go fast. And I use the Levitas foil for pumping sessions, so if it's really wavy or if it's a little bit lighter and I need some extra lift, that foil is awesome. I really enjoy it, and it just does really well in any swell, and it's super fun to ride. Alright, so now I'm going to go on to talk about my experience of learning to wing. So to be completely honest, when I first saw winging, I thought it looked kind of dumb, and I was like, why don't you just windsurf basically? And there were all these guys using either really big boards that were basically subs or these like tiny boards that looked impossible to get up on, and it just didn't really look that appealing to me because coming from kite foiling and having such minimal gear, I didn't want to be like lugging around this massive board that I couldn't even pick up with one hand. Then at the beginning of this summer, my dad started winging, and he was like telling me all about it and how all the guys at Sherman that were usually kite foiling were winging, and everybody was super stoked on it. So I was like, wow, I wonder what the hype is about. I guess it must be fun. So then the first time I went out, I actually borrowed his gear, and basically what we did is my dad winged upwind and I kited upwind, and we met on the water and switched gear basically. And it was awesome because I had so much runway downwind that I didn't have to worry about like getting flushed down the river at Sherman Island. Honestly, coming from kite foiling, it was pretty easy to actually figure out how to get up. I did have a little bit of trouble at first with like sitting on my knees and then like trying to actually stand up. But in terms of just handling the wind, because I'm so familiar with kite foiling, Then once I kind of figured out how to use the wing and how to power it, I was pretty much fine. And then once I actually got up foiling, then I was totally cruising and it was all good from there. But by the first session, I was basically able to stay upwind and I was jibing and I was pretty comfortable once I was foiling. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the guys were using these really big, heavy boards and it just wasn't that attractive to me. But what I had was this awesome little surf foil board and I was like, why don't I just try winging on that? And all of the guys, and including my dad, were like, oh, you're not going to be able to get up, it's too small. But let me tell you, the day that I managed to get up, first try on that little board was very satisfying. And I loved it. It was super fun. It was small. I could carry it with one hand. And at that point, I was like, okay, I definitely want to wing more. It's actually really fun. All right, so now I'm going to move on to some tips for you guys that will hopefully make it a little bit easier for you to learn to wing. So my first tip would definitely be to start with a big board. And basically how much you weigh in kilograms should be the volume board you get. So for example, I weigh about 65 kilograms. So having a board that was between 65 and 70 liters was the perfect size for me. Then once you're really comfortable with that, you can downsize to a smaller board and something that's just a little bit more fun and technical for you to ride. My next tip would be to practice kneeling on the board before you actually try to go out winging. I personally thought the feeling of kneeling on the board was a little bit tricky, and just to get used to it, I think it's really smart just to paddle out on the board that you're going to be using and feel it out, try kneeling on it, try even standing on it if you can, because then by the time you actually try to go out with your wing, it's going to feel a lot more natural and you're not going to have so many changing variables all at one time the first time you try to go out. The same goes for the wing. Just feel the wing on land a little bit and see how it feels and see how it behaves. When it comes to actually using the wing on the water, I think the key is to hold your upwind hand higher than you think you need to. This will just help prevent dragging the wingtip. The next tip involves getting up, and basically I think that when you're going from kneeling to standing, the key is to put your front foot directly in the middle of the board and then stand up from there. If you put your front foot to one of the sides, you're probably going to tip over that way, and it's going to be really difficult to actually try to get up. So having that front foot right in the middle of the board makes a huge difference. Finally, when you're trying to get up on a small board or a sinker, there's a couple different ways to do it. One way is to just kneel and try to build some speed when you're kneeling and then kind of pump up from there. And the other option is to actually stand on the board and sink it and then try to get up from there. I personally like the first way just because it requires a lot less power, because you're just trying to get a little bit of speed for the board, and once you get some speed, you're just more stable and it's a lot easier to stand up from there. Again, that's just my personal opinion and kind of what I've felt has been easier for me, but it might be different for other people. Obviously, I have a 37 liter board, so maybe if you're using a much smaller board, it might be easier to actually completely sink it and stand on it while it's underwater and then get up from there. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. I'm definitely planning to do some more winging tutorials, including how to tack and how to jibe. I didn't want to do them until I really felt like I got the hang of it myself and really knew what I was talking about and would be able to explain it well. So definitely keep an eye out for those coming up. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Comment below if you have any questions and let me know what you want to see. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye!